let me ask you about for you to describe a past decision by the port that you disagreed with. And this is a 3-point question, so we got, or 2-point. So a past decision by the port that you disagreed with, why, and what would you have done differently?
Okay. You know, to this day, we are still paying the price for the quote-unquote stealth tax that was levied to build the Bremerton Marina. And there's a classic example of what happens in a community when you do not have transparency, when you do not go out to your people, to your constituents. You cannot expect everyone to show up on their bi-monthly meetings, that we have to be embedded in those communities. We have lost so much trust, and it has not only impacted the Port of Bremerton and the reputation that they have, but it has impacted many, many other organizations, public entities, with some of their taxes and some of their levies, whether they're very important EMS levies, South Kitsap school bond that came out on the heels of that. It really hurt the trust of our people, and there's a great lesson there, that before we go and utilize our public dollars, we better make sure we have their support.
Thank you. Axel, would you want me to read the question again?
Yeah, would you, Joe? Thanks.
Okay, question is, describe a past decision by the port that you disagree with. And the question is why, and what would you have done differently?
I don't disagree with the facility improvements and the things that have been brought. What I do disagree with is the lack of transparency and the lack of public input that was asked or not asked in those processes or in those decisions. And again, moving forward, that is something that is critical to all of us that are taxpayers in this community, is that we're allowed to speak our opinions, share our opinions with our elected officials, and then our elected officials listen to the opinions of others. And that is very, very important going forward with the port business.
Very good, thank you. So actually this is the same question, and it has to do with something that happened in the past that still touches a few people's nerves. And the question is, the port in the past, as mentioned by one of our candidates, has to do with it, the port in the past has gotten away with adding taxes to the peeps. Folks, I don't write them, I just read them. So what level of transparency will you bring to the office? And we had Axel, I know you ended last. Your turn.
Well, I also believe that there's some, to answer that question, we need to have consistency in the port district. For example, our meetings. Port meetings need to be scheduled at the same time and scheduled at times when the public can attend. Shouldn't always be in the middle of the day when your people are out there working, when business people are at work and they're trying to support their own business. They need to be available when the public's available. That will allow for public opinion. They need to be in the same location as well, so people know where to be. It needs to be advertised in either the paper or in some sort of publication on a regular basis, so that everyone is able to attend and give their opinions.
All right, thank you. Sean?
Well, first, I think we need to look last at the concept of levying taxes for these improvements right now. With what's going on in our country right now, taxes are a paramount funding mechanism for many, many things, within our public sector. And as we prioritize those, I don't know that as high on my priority list would be a tax for maybe port infrastructure. I think there's ways to obtain that through leasing of properties, through creative business solutions, and partnering with the private sector. In the event that a tax creates a positive return for all the stakeholders involved, again, it's education. It's not just our port meetings. As commissioners, we've got to go out within our respective districts and go to the people. I just think it's too easy to hang your coat on a hook and say, well, we had a meeting and no one chose to show up. But I don't think that's enough. I think we go out and embed ourselves. There's a lot of community organizations and ways we can get our message to the people without it merely being a meeting at the port.
Thank you. And Axel?
I'm going to restate that.
The question is, how would you, the port in the past, sorry about that, has gotten away with adding taxes to the peeps. What level of transparency will you bring to the office?
Harry answered that.
Did I miss that? I'm sorry.
It's shots too.
All right, let me start with some caffeine this morning. I apologize. So let me stay with Sean then move on to the next one is how would you improve current port business practices?
Well, again, I think it starts with the business plan. You know, in meeting with existing commissioners and meeting with all of the executive staff, I think right now there's a little feeling of people floundering. There's a lack of a plan, there's a lack of vision. And I think the first thing we need to do is to take those key staff and those commissioners and determine a short-range and long-range plan that focuses on true economic development and jobs. We need to stay succinct. You know, we need to go and accomplish those two things. We need to know what our organization's about and stay focused on economic and development and jobs. By creating that business plan with different subsects, like a marketing plan, to go out there and execute those plans. Build the awareness, stick to the plan, and we will be successful. But we've got to stop making knee-jerk reactions, you know, pet projects, projects of the week, and creating social equity to build roads to nowhere.
Thank you. Axel?
Well, I think the port needs to be unified. We need to unify the commission, and we need to unify the employees of the port, so they have clear, concise direction as to where the commission would like to take the port and where the public wants the port to go. And with that unification, we can then strike out and we can line out our goals, whether it be short-term or long-term, and accomplish the needs and the responsibilities of the port as it relates to our county.
Great, thank you. All right, staying with you, Axel, since it was mentioned several times through the answers that we heard earlier, which the question begins, jobs, how to help our area out. What's your plan for more jobs? Axel?
Well, we have some great facilities. Basically, I'll break it up into three parts. We've got the Marina, Port Orchard, Marina, Bremerton, Airport Industrial Park. Each one of those is an individual business unit, and each one of those needs to have targeted marketing plans strategically in place or put in place to promote each one of those facilities individually so that jointly at the end of the season we can sit here and say that we've reached or attempted to reach closer sustainability. With those plans, those areas will also increase jobs by bringing more businesses to the community, whether it be an industrial park or increasing facility use. Those in turn will bring more jobs to our community.
Well, right now, I do believe that our number one opportunity to create jobs is with the industrial park. And again, as I spoke to earlier, internally and as an organization, we need to determine where we reside within our competitive set. We need to understand what our competitive advantages are, what our strengths are, and what our weaknesses are. Once we determine that internally, then we can go and share that externally. We need to capture regional awareness. We have competitive advantages over here. It's obvious that it would cost less to do business over at the Port of Bremerton than some of the larger port districts up and down the I-5 corridor. And there's so many different vendors that play a role in so many different components of manufacturing. They just don't know we're here. And I believe by creating who we are and what we're about and what our competitive advantages are, going out there and actively sharing that message, we can pull jobs to our industrial park in a very short term.
Great, thank you. So now let's get a little bit specific, as was mentioned by one of our candidates about the different businesses out at the port. This question specifically asked, discuss business aviation opportunities at Bremerton National Airport, including the possibility of scheduled flights.
Let me start with, I think it's great that the port recently has been engaged in conversations on a regular basis with the Boeing company. You know, I don't know if we're ever going to see a major manufacturing Boeing plant here at the Port of Bremerton, but this is how we start to gain regional awareness, that we have a seat at that table. Because you look at the manufacturing process of Boeing aircraft, there are many different vendors that play a role in that. And there's no reason, maybe we don't have Boeing as a whole here, but there's no reason we can't have a component of that. We have, you know, wonderful aviation assets. We have a long runway. Obviously some improvements to make it longer with larger aircraft may be needed in the future. But we have the hangar space and we have the space, you know, to go out here and capture a piece of that market. Again, it's having that seat at the table. I'm happy that they've started that with the Boeing company, something we need to continue, and then to go out to the next levels and also reach out to their vendors and the different key companies that are already active in manufacturing of those aircraft.
Thank you. Axel,
Go ahead and restate that question.
please. Happy to. Discuss business aviation opportunities at Bremerton National Airport, including the possibility of scheduled service.
I'm going to take that directly at the airport. We have just recently had FedEx start landing and bringing freight in and out of our airport over there. In the past, we have had scheduled flights in and out of the airport many years ago, which that company pulled out. But again, that is something that we can now, I would look at addressing that again, having scheduled flights in and out. If you look at what Bellingham did, the port up north there, they have recently had flights going in and out there, back and forth to SeaTac. They've also used some overload up there and going to other larger, longer destinations. And again, we have the same abilities here with our runway. We can currently land jets on that runway, and that is a very advantage to us here in the county. And with our growing population base that we've had over the last 20 years, that's something that we should identify and start marketing toward.
Thank you. So moving on from the air, let's go to the water. So staying with you, Axel, discuss the prioritization and repair costs for the Harper Pier.
Well, the Harper Pier is a community facility. A lot of people from all over use it, not just Port Orchard, but Bremerton, Walla, Parilli, and so forth. That is a community service. I see it as a community service. We need to support that. We need to be keeping that either in repair or providing that facility for our community. That is a very important priority to myself personally. I think it's an important priority to the community. Regardless of what the expense is, it's a return to the community, and that's what the port does. And I think in that case, it needs a better priority.
I think the Harper Pier is a perfect case study for some of the problems with our port. And talking with key staff, I brought up to them the idea of this Harper's Pier, because it's frustrating that you have this asset and that we've gone so far and so long that we've avoided that it's in disrepair. You know, why do not we have a better handle of our assets and the depreciation of those assets so they don't become emergencies? And staff told me that time in and time again for years that they have bringing up the ill repair of Harper's Pier to our commissioners, and our commissioners simply choose to ignore it to the point where it becomes an emergency. And now we've got to act now. We've got to act irresponsibly. So I think that the lesson to be learned there is, again, it's part of this planning process to schedule out each one of our assets and have a better idea of creating reserves for the repair and the maintenance of our facilities so they don't become emergencies like Harper Pier is today.
Thank you. And Sean, the next question is, what steps can the Port of Bremerton take in order to fully realize its mission to stimulate economic development?
You know, I'm going to repeat it again, but again, that's kind of my business style is focusing on our mission statement, and our mission statement is economic development and it's jobs. So we have got to start by creating a business plan. I know I'm being repetitive, but it doesn't exist. It needs to be there. It needs to be you know, detailed out. It needs to have the buy-in from the community, from the commissioners, and from the staff. And we need to go and execute that plan. And I don't want to make this oversimplified, but when you have a business plan like that, that's what makes an organization successful. That's exactly where we're going to start. And if we do that, we will succeed.
Thank you. Axel?
That question is very similar to a prior question that was asked here earlier. And again, I'll answer it the same way. We need to identify each one of our facilities, and we need to strike out and have a plan and target the marketing for those facilities to make them sustainable.
Okay, very good. All right, so this question is well, a little bit on the detailed side. So the question is, what RCWs control the ports in the state of Washington, and what are the objectives of a port? So Ken, it starts with you, Axel. So.
Okay. Well, if many of you are not familiar with the RCWs, they're the written state law, the written state codes that we're supposed to operate by. And our port has a manual of those codes, and that is the manual, or more or less I'd call it the Bible, our operating Bible, that we need to stay within the law and stay within the, color within the line, so to speak. With that said,
So the second question is, what are the objectives of the port?
well, the objectives, I guess, probably have lost a little bit of focus over the years, but the objectives of the port are to create economics for our communities, build jobs, and return to the community or the taxpayer. They need to be foremost, and that needs to be the focus. I think we've lost some of that over the last few years, what that direction is.
I didn't bring the exact RCW with me today. I can provide that exact number, but I've had a chance to read through that, because at the end of the day, that is the state law that we need to abide by. And really the objectives when that RCW was written was to create a very, very unique public entity that was designed for economic development and jobs. You know, there are many, many, many port districts throughout the state of Washington. It is set up with the intent of being an enterprise fund. However, it's one of the only public entities that I'm aware of that also provides for taxing authority. And so that's an interesting mix, and it's something we need to be very, very cautious of. Whenever you have these public assets being supposed to be facilitated as an enterprise fund with taxing authority, we have the ability to get ourselves in a little bit of a trouble when we lack transparency, like what happened with that quote-unquote stealth tax with the Bremerton Marina. But at the end of the day, RCWs were created to create these enterprise funds with taxing authority to focus on economic development and jobs. And from the 30,000 foot view, that's what the intentions of our state was.